First thing I do is set my timer. Okay. I want to tell you a little bit more about what Doug said with regard to why I chose to jump off of a mountain. All of my life, academia had been the environment in which I existed. In fact, it had been truly the one constant in my life. From the time that I was 3 years old, we lived actually south of New Orleans. So my accent, by the way, has some Brooklyn tinges in it because some of the same people who settled Brooklyn also settled New Orleans. And there is some of that. And I lived in Boston for 20 years, so 25 years. So I have a strange accent. But at the age of 3, my father was a farmer. My mother was a school teacher in this small town south of New Orleans. I used to love to sit on my father's lap when he was running the tractor. My mother didn't think that was such a good idea, as he was pretty big and I was pretty small, and she could imagine me slipping off of his lap onto under the wheels of the tractor. So she took me to school. And so at 3 years old, I was in first grade. And at the end of the year, I got this report card. And it said, I will never forget what it said. Joan is a good girl. I was pretty upset. I had saved all my papers because I anticipated that might be the case. So I went up to the teacher and I went home, got all my stuff, brought it to school and said, but I did all the work. Why can't I have a grade? So I got my grade and I finished first grade. Second grade, I was 4. Third grade, I was 5. And at that time now, we moved from south of New Orleans into the city because my father was one of 12 children who all ran a farm. And as farming became less and less possible to make a living, then they all went to New Orleans and opened grocery stores. And so they all had grocery stores. So I grew up with an apartment in the back of a grocery store. But when I went to school, which I did with the neighbor because my mother and father were just opening the grocery store, I went to 3rd grade because I thought that's where I should be. And I came home and my mother said, so did you register and everything? I said, sure. What grade? 3rd. Oh, no. Oh, no. I said, but why? I did 1st and 2nd and part of 3rd. And she said, I'm not going to let you do that. And so she went to the principal, and the principal said, but she's too young for 1st grade. Because my birthday was in March, and, I was just right off, but they let me in. But I fell in love with learning when I was 3 years old. So academia has been my home, learning. When I was in the convent, I taught all of the chemistries at Dominican College, except physical chemistry, but all the others. And I had the opportunity in summers to go off to Florida State University and learn about radioisotopes and nuclear physics. I had these wonderful opportunities to learn, to continually learn. One of the things that had me leave the convent was the fact that I saw myself becoming more and more the epitome of something, but less and less who I was. So the choice had to be, do I want to become the facade? Or do I believe enough in myself to break the pattern and become who I am? And that's what I did after 11 years. And I can tell you it was scary, but I did it. And I can tell you it's the best decision I ever made. I would not undo the 11 years I had there because I was an only child. And only children, regardless of how wonderful their parents are, you cannot help but be self-centered. There's nobody else there to share with. except your mother and father. And when I entered the convent, there were 10 of us. So anything that happened to one of us happened to 10 of us. And all of a sudden, I learned about sharing. The other thing I learned, I've only grown to appreciate with time since I've left. And that is to be quiet. One of the things I love about Redstone Canyon is it's quiet. I can write, and I can listen to the depths of my being. And I'm going to talk more about that during our time together here this morning, because I think that is a key to exuberance. I'm a member of AARP, joined it, I can't tell you how many years ago, many, and didn't start my business until I left academia. I left academia for the same reason I left the convent. I felt the facade was pulling me and pushing me and squeezing me, so I couldn't be my whole self there. Yes, I was a researcher. Yes, I loved teaching medical students. I loved the aha when they finally understood how the brain was put together. It was exciting, but not exciting enough after almost 30 years. I got my PhD in '72 from Tulane University in New Orleans, and I retired as Professor Emeritus from Tufts Medical School in 1999. Started my business called Beyond Success, because I believe that if we are to create and sustain success, and by success, I don't mean somebody else's idea of success. I mean your own idea of success. Meaningful, fulfilling success, which is why I call it Beyond Success. I have not been happier in my life than when we moved here in January 2003. And the reason we moved here, as I had told my husband when I retired from the medical school, I am ready to leave the Northeast. I want to live in an environment that is different. I want to live in an environment with a different pace. So I said, I know you're not ready. When you're ready, you tell me. And I will go anywhere in the world with one prerequisite. It has to be beautiful. Now, we were married in Breckenridge in '79. I was in New Orleans. He was in California. We brought our blood tests. We went to the county clerk, and we had the chief of police as our witness. And we got married in Breckenridge because we thought it was so beautiful. We didn't know then that Colorado would be our home. So my husband's at CSU. He's still neuroscientist, developmental neuroscientist. And I have had the pleasure of taking what I know about how the brain works and looking at it from a completely different perspective. When I was studying about the brain, with all of the instrumentation that I used, electron microscopy, confocal microscopy, 3D image reconstruction, I was trying to wrestle the secrets out of it. How does it work? When I stopped all the work and I sat back and I listened to what it meant, I began to say, you know what? I appreciate the amazing capacity of the brain, but maybe it is, as the American Indians told us many years ago, the teacher within. The teacher to show us a way to exuberance. So I want to start the portion of this that has to do with the real talk. This was all kind of introductory. By reading you a poem, I thought about you. yesterday in the quiet of Redstone Canyon and how I wanted to introduce the topic. And as I was walking at sunrise up the hills and in the valleys, these are the words that came to me. Life's precious juice flows into our beings, bringing its mystery moment by moment. Open to its mysteries, beyond the scope of mind, beyond understanding. Feel the vastness of the freedom of being. Be carried by the energy of life to the shores of expansiveness. Focus on the bigness. Don't be imprisoned by the smallness. All life seeks the vastness, the expansiveness of love, giving and receiving. Know you are more than you think you know. Bring the deeper knowing into your life. Listen. Listen to the fullness of your being. Treasures yearn to be shared, to be gifted to others. Never, never doubt the vastness of your being. This is my gift to you, because we tend to look at information such as we lose neurons as our brains age. Well, let me tell you, folks, we lose neurons before we're born. We actually lose more than 50% of the neurons that are born in our brain before we're born. That is not a limitation. More recently, studies have shown it's not the gray matter we're losing. And let me remind you, the gray matter is the place where the essence of the cells are, the cell bodies, the machinery of the cell. But it's the white matter. Now, the white matter is called white because the fibers that conduct electricity away from the neuron is covered by myelin, a fatty substance, and it looks whitish. But what does that mean? Neuroscientists don't know what that means. It may mean we conduct impulses more efficiently. And say, oh no, Joan, don't give me this. Let me tell you of a recent study. This is called a functional MRI. That means they're taking an MRI while you're doing something to see what parts of the brain are being activated. And they studied what parts of the brain were being activated in several different tasks in young people, meaning about 19 and 20, and in middle-aged people, which were about 50. And they noticed something. More of the brain lit up when the 50-year-old was doing the task than when the young person was doing the very same task. Now, how do you interpret that? At first, neuroscientists said this is what we call compensation. That is, there's not enough oomph in that one part of the brain, so you've got to use more parts of the brain. But let me tell you, that is an interpretation. I did some research yesterday just so I could bring you some new data. And the data, there's an article called Compensation or Maturation, meaning that what was interpreted as compensation before is now being looked at in a completely different framework in 2006. And the maturation means that we're bringing to that task not only what is required to do that task, but we're integrating it with other information that we have from other experiences. And therefore, we're using more of our brain. That's not a bad thing. In fact, when MRIs first came out, I was teaching medical students, and they used to always balk at, why do we have to learn all these parts of the brain and all these pathways and where they come together and where they're separate? And then MRIs came out, and you could see everything. And their patients were saying, what's this, what's this, what's this? And they came back and said, thank you. I now know. But one of the studies that was first done when MRIs came out is some very successful people were identified who had MRIs. And they were on a TV show that I didn't happen to see, but the students were all fired about it and told me the next day. And it was that a successful lawyer, a successful judge, a successful mathematician, and a physicist were all on this show, and they had one thing in common. They had had abnormalities of brain development, and each of them only had a small rim of brain, not the full complement of all the parts of the brain. But what was so interesting is that whenever these people did anything, talked, walked, watched, all of the brain lit up. All of the brain lit up. We have so much more potential than we can imagine. We only use a small portion of the DNA in our bodies. There's much more there to be explored. How do we shut it down? Oh, it's very easy, isn't it? Yes. Our consciousness is like a lens. And the lens can be as big as this room, or it can be as small as my left toe. Now, if I get up in the morning and I look at my left toe, it's really bent. I really can't swim. I really can't. I really don't. I'm scared of heights still, even though I jumped off the mountain, which is part of why I did it. I can't. I'm not a sports person. I'm not a skier. I'm a snowshoer, but I'm not a skier. I'm the kid who they used to say, do we have to take her on our team? If I woke up in the morning and that's where my lens of consciousness chose to focus, I would expect to trip over myself all day long. I'd never think about writing a book. You can't walk. What makes you think you can write a book? It's so easy to limit our consciousness. So I tell you, be aware of when you're closing that consciousness down to what you can't do. Your being is so much bigger than your mind, is so much bigger than your brain, that when you listen to possibilities, well, maybe I can't do blah, 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 but what can I do? Who can I do it with? Each of you in this room has a spark of genius within you. No, I'm not being facetious. You really do. No one else has that particular combination of interests, experiences, talents, and perspectives. And when you deprive us of it by looking at what you don't have, which of course will imprison you because you can't possibly give us what you do have when you're thinking about everything you don't have, when you don't make your contribution, no one else in this world can make it but you. No one. No one has that unique set. Then who are deprived? Each and every one of us is deprived. I remember as a little girl, and I went on the internet this morning to get these words. I remember Roy Rogers singing, "Don't Fence Me In." Do you remember that? Give me land, lots of land. Now, I want you to remember, I'm going to read the words, and you can say them with me, because I know many of you know them. I'd sing it if I could, but guess what? I can't sing either. In fact, in the convent, I knew music, but I couldn't sing. And there was a desperate need for a cantor to teach all the other cantors. And the Mother Superior said to me, if there was anybody else that we could ask, we would. Because you can't sing, but you know music, so we'll ask you to do it. Nonetheless, every time you start to think about what you can't do or what you don't have or how you're restricted, I want you to remember these words. Oh, give me land, lots of land, under starry skies above. You join in. Don't fence me in. Let me ride through the wide open country that I love. Don't fence me in. Let me be by myself in the evening breeze and listen to the murmur of the cottonwood trees. Send me off forever, but I ask you, please, don't fence me in. Just turn me loose. Let me straddle my old saddle underneath the western skies. On my cayuse, let me wander over yonder till I see the mountains rise. I want to ride to the ridge where the west commences and gaze at the moon till I lose my senses. And I can't look at hovels, and I can't stand fences. Don't fence me in. Oh, give me land, lots of land, under starry skies. Don't fence me in. Let me ride through the wide open country that I love. Don't fence me in. Let me be by myself in the evening breeze and listen to the murmur of the cottonwood trees. Send me off forever, but I ask you, please, don't fence me in. Just turn me loose, let me straddle my old saddle underneath the western skies. Oh, my cayuse, let me wander over yonder till I see the mountains rise. I want to ride to the ridge where the west commences and gaze at the moon till I lose my senses. And I can't look at hobbles and I can't stand fences. Don't fence me in. This song has the secret to the exuberance of being. We have more capacities than we use. We have more brain function that we use and don't use that we have available. In fact, neuroscientists have claimed the words plastic. They call the brain plastic. And what does that mean? Because you can mold plastic. Because you can change the shape of plastic. Actually, we have about 10,000 neurons that are born in our hippocampus each day. And the hippocampus is the part of the brain where short-term memory is. But if we don't use it that day, guess what? We lose it. And if you fence yourself in and think you can't, you'll lose the capacity to use those neurons. There is within each of us this spark of genius. And what is it? I call it cellular wisdom. And I want to explain what I mean by that. How many of you, hold up your hand, has been in the presence of someone who's died? Many of us. I had the privilege of being with my mother for the 12 days before she died and watch the process and be in the process with her. And then there is that moment when life is gone. What was living is now not. Our mind cannot comprehend the mystery of life. No scientist can. No philosopher can. Our minds are too small to get around the concept of life. But we know it. We know it. How many times have you been talking to someone, and in talking to them, you say something you never knew you knew? Have you had that experience? Yes. And you say, where did that come from? Right? Uh-huh. And it came from the part of you that knows. So the question I often ask when I'm posed with something that I don't know the answer to is I ask, what is it that I know that I don't know I know? What is it that I know that I don't know that I know? And do you know what that does? That opens a door. Because as soon as you say, I don't know it, man, that door just blam, slams shut. But if you open it and you say, what is it I know that I don't know that I know? It will all of a sudden pop up in the weirdest, most unbelievable places. Listen to yourself when you talk to other people. Listen to what you say. If you start to shut down, remember the words, and you tell me, don't fence me in. If you start to hear yourself say it, I can't do this, I can't go there, look at me, what are you going to say? Don't fence me in. And the second part of that is to open to the possibility of what's there. Do you have to know what's there? No, you really don't. There is so much we don't know. I can tell you that in science, there is a new journal born every day. Every single day. And a journal will have 50 pages of new reports of research. Every day. Well, how can we publish so much? Because there's so much we don't know that we're starting to learn. And the more we know we don't know. But it's coming up. And it comes up as you invite it. It comes up as you allow it. It comes up as you open to it. Living in the West now, which I'm telling you is fabulous for me. The big open skies. I go to Boston. Where's the sky? The big open skies. That is a model to you of expansiveness. You've got it all around you. Let it teach you. So I'm going to use the word being, B-E-I-N-G, to tell you about 5 things that I want you to remember besides don't fence me in. The B is for being. Your being is in contact with this life force all of the time. You don't have to earn it. You're not going to lose it. It's yours. It's your essence of life, your essence of being. And that's where all the stuff is that you know that you don't know that you know. Live from the vastness of your being, not from the smallness that your mind can close to. How many of you start off the morning, one bad thing happens? You can't find your keys. Okay? What happens? You start looking at the rest of the day. What's going to happen now? In my new book, Cellular Wisdom for Women, and it's not just for women, but it's because I know women have a lot of these approaches, the chapter's called What's Wrong? How many of you answer the phone if your children called you unexpectedly at a certain time when, you didn't expect them to call? What's the first thing you say? What's wrong? Right? Well, ladies, gentlemen, politicians, everybody, stop the what's wrong. Because when you close the lens of your consciousness down to what's wrong, guess what you see? What's wrong? You don't see what's right. And will you ever build anything inside yourself, a relationship with your children or grandchildren or spouse? Will you build anything based on what's wrong? Not a chance. Not a chance. So tune into the vastness of being. The second letter is E in being. And I call it the expansiveness. Look at the sky. Think about don't fence me in. Remember, you have more resources than you know. Our society is not one that teaches us about our inner resources. It teaches us models of how life should look at various times in our lives. Would you want to be the models that our society promotes? I wouldn't. Most of them are very empty. Most of them are very external. There is a richness inside of you, an expansiveness, that you can become familiar with at any age, in any condition, at any time, as long as you live. And from that comes strength. And I know you're going to hear a lot about physical exercise. And I do want to make this little point about physical exercise. There's a word for new brain vessel development. It's called angiogenesis. When you exercise, whether you're 70, 80, or 90, there is new blood growth, new growth of blood vessels, angiogenesis, in the brain. And why is that important? Neurons are the only cells in the body that do not store nutrients. Isn't that amazing? They're so important, but they store no nutrients. Why? Because they're totally present to everything that's happening moment by moment. And they don't use any energy to store. They use the energy to see what's going on in your internal environment and your external environment. They're always present, which means they need nutrients brought to them moment by moment. What brings the nutrients? Blood. So if there are more blood vessels, you're getting more nutrients to the brain that can function better. So physical exercise actually causes the development of new blood vessels in the brain. Evoking expansiveness, that's the E. The I. Live from the inside out. If I would have lived from the outside in, I'd have stayed in the convent. Why? I was a good teacher. Nobody could understand why I was leaving. But I knew in the inside it wasn't right. I was dying. I was drying up. If I lived from the outside in, I'd still be at Tufts Medical School. Was that a bad thing? No. There were many years I enjoyed it. It got to a certain point where it was a burden. I was drying up and dying. Live from the inside out. The I in being is for the inside out. What do you value? Are you using your values every day? If you value love, What are you giving, and what are you allowing people to give you? If you value truth, don't hide from your own truth. If you value being who you are, find a way to express yourself. It could be writing notes to someone. It could be volunteering. But be who you are. Live from the inside out. The N is for now. Yes, you've had a wonderful life. Yes, wonderful things have happened. But when can you contribute to the world? Only now. Now is the moment of choice. Now is the moment to decide. A recent study showed that forgiveness led people to a greater quality of well-being in older people. Simply forgiving led to a better quality of well-being and satisfaction in life. Now is the moment of choice. No matter what happened yesterday, or last week, or 10 years ago, or when they were growing up, now is only the time for choice. And G, you'll probably guess, is for gratitude. We have so much abundance in our lives. It may not show up as green dollars, but the abundance is there. The abundance of experiences, the abundance of sharing, the abundance, look at you all, you are fabulous people supporting each other. The abundance of community, the abundance of friend. So remember being. The B is for being. Live from the vastness of your being. E is for evoking your expansiveness. What is it I know that I don't know that I know? I is for living from the inside out. N is for now. Choose today to do something that expresses who you really are and enjoy a greater quality of well-being. And the G is to be grateful, gratitude for everything that has come your way, whether it appeared to be wonderful at the time or not. And so I would like to close by reading the poem, because I really wrote this yesterday for each of you. Life's precious juice flows into our beings, bringing its mystery moment by moment. Open to its mysteries, beyond the scope of mind, beyond understanding. Feel the vastness, the freedom of being. Be carried by the energy of life to the shores of expansiveness. Focus on the bigness. Don't be imprisoned by the smallness. All life seeks the vastness, the expansiveness of love, giving and receiving. Know you know more than you think you know. Bring the deeper knowing into your life. Listen. Listen to the fullness of your being. Treasures yearn to be shared, to be gifted to others. Never, never doubt the vastness of your being. Thank you.
touch the same microphone. Thank you, Doug. Thank you, Doctor. I appreciate very much your presentation. It was quite inspiring. Just to add something to it, if you don't mind.
Oh, you're very welcome.
Joan?
Yes.
On the way out, Cathay Reynolds lost her keys.
We all know where they are, don't we? Somewhere.
Yes, and she found them, though.
Ah.
Okay.